Hi everybody and welcome back to Valuteer. In this second video in our startup series, we're going to take a look at how to import your volunteers from a spreadsheet. This is a fairly simple process and only take a couple of minutes. So with that, let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the All Volunteers menu on the left hand side and click on it, at which point we're going to get our volunteers screen up and we're going to have no volunteers at this point. What you want to do next is click the Import Volunteers button up in the top right corner here. That'll open up a copy and paste volunteers from Excel pop-up screen for us, where we can simply take our data and pop it into the bottom portion here. For a minute though, we're going to close this down so we can take a look at our spreadsheet because the data needs to be in a certain format. So I've got a sample test data spreadsheet here, and we're going to take a look at what we need to do the import successfully. So what we need to do is have a first name, last name, email address at minimum. You also might want to have the street address for the volunteers, their city, province or state, postal or zip code, telephone number and cell number as well. To run this import successfully, all you need to have though is the first name, last name and email address at a minimum. In our sample data here, I've also made a couple of intentional errors just to show you one of the features of the import, in that we do a fuzzy search on the city and we import abbreviations as well. So we need to take a look at what happens if some of the data isn't quite right and what to do to fix that problem. The first thing we want to do is select all of the data that we want to import. And as a startup task, I would suggest that you only do a small subset of volunteers so that if anything goes wrong, we have some way to manage that issue. So if we just select our data and then hit Control C or right click and copy, then we can shut this down and go back to our Import Volunteers button and give it a click. Then click in the bottom area here, and again we can either right click and go paste or Control V on your keyboard. Now when we put the data in, it's going to look pretty ugly, but that's when we want to hit the Format Volunteers button here. And when we do that, it's going to, in the bottom portion of the screen here, format the data for us and take a look at some of the things that we're going to try and match here. So in the first instance here, in our first record, I've misspelled Calgary, and the import has tried to correct that for me, and it's chosen the correct spelling for Calgary, but given me a drop-down list as well. So we may not be able to collect or catch all the errors, so make sure before you copy and paste and you've gone through your spreadsheet and made any necessary edits to correct your data. We'll also notice that in the province field here, it's converted AB as Alberta, but not Alta. So that's one thing we're going to have to correct here before we do our import. And so if we have any data that we need to correct before we do the import, we want to hit the reset button. So now I can bring up my spreadsheet again and go in, and if I want to correct this I can. I'll change Alta to AB. We'll even put a period in here and see what happens if we do that. Alright, so we've copied it again, and we're going to hit Format Volunteers. Oh, let's hit Reset. Paste that in, hit Format again, and now we can see that the AB is Alberta and AB period is also Alberta. And since we corrected our misspelling Calgary, it no longer shows as an error. Next thing we want to do before we hit the import button is to make sure that we've got the checkbox that says send volunteers an invite to log into Valuteer checkbox checked. So what happens here if we check this is that when we click the import volunteers button, an email will be sent to each one of these volunteers and asking them to log into Valuteer and informing them that we've created an account for them. There'll be a link in the email that directs them, that they can click on and directs them directly to the login page, which activates their account. So if we take a look at our data, we've got our checkbox checked. When we're ready to go, all we need to do is hit the Import Volunteers button. And as we can see now, it's processing those imports, and we should get a confirmation message here fairly quickly. Volunteer details saved, 6 volunteers added to the system. So at this point, you can close the import screen, and now we look at our all volunteers. We've got our volunteer list. Now, because we selected the checkbox allowing the Valuteer system to send your volunteers a login email for when their account's created, the volunteers themselves are going to get a email message that looks like this, where they can click the link here and it'll take them to the login screen, allowing them to activate their Valuteer account. So in this case, we're looking at Dorothy Moore, and we'll just copy her email address here. And then when we click on the link, we'll get the account activation screen up here. So Dorothy will go click on the link, set a password, agree to the terms of service and the privacy policy, and click the confirm account button. And when she does that, then she has activated her Valuteer account. And in subsequent videos, we'll get into what your volunteers see, but we won't cover that here. We'll just show you how she can log into Valuteer as well to search opportunities in her local area. So that's all there is to importing volunteers. Now, you can rerun this process as many times as you need to, and adding new volunteers is quite simple through this process, as you can see. If you happen to run the import more than once, there will be no duplicates created by the system, as the match is done on the email address. So as you roll this out to your volunteers, you can run the import as many times as you'd like. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about this, please don't hesitate to contact us through the help menu link under the user menu. And with that, we'll close down this video, and we'll see you all next time.